Welcome to Her Hoop Stats podcast, your podcast for all things women's basketball at every level. I'm Helen Williams, and I'm joined today. I'm so excited by our resident subject matter expert on all things dealing with player deals, Richard Cohen. Richard, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here. Nice to be considered an expert. I'm not sure if it's totally true, but
listen, buddy, you know more than the rest
of
of us. You know more than the rest of us. So my attempt today is to get through the confusion that I have, and I'm sure if I have confusion about certain terms and things going on, other people do too. So I'm really glad to have you here today so that we can talk about certain things. But give me your off the top. Give me your impressions of the games from last night. Which, by the way, I have a bone to pick. I couldn't watch a game in Atlanta because I was not able to go in person, which is a pet peeve of mine and many people in terms of just being able to find the game. So WNBA, you guys got to fix that. So okay, enough of my rant. What do you think?
I mean, it was a solid win for Atlanta, taking care of business against a team that looked like they might have been a little tired, maybe.
Yeah.
LA kind of needed to run the table the rest of the season in order to really put pressure on the teams that are above them to make the playoffs. And obviously didn't have quite enough to get it done last night. The other game, they're playing out the string with Chicago and Connecticut. It felt like the first time Connecticut have really shown up looking like they want the season to end.
This is
a team that, has had enough, knows that, that they're not going anywhere this year and they would quite like it to end. It was interesting to see Chicago put in one of their best performances of the year right after Angel Reese criticized half the roster in a piece in the Chicago Tribune. But yeah, maybe she needs to criticize them before every game, and then we see whether they show up and play like that each time.
Listen, you as a former coach, I know with the officials, you got to plant that seed, man. You got to plant that seed, whether they want to admit it or not. They're thinking about it when they're out there on the floor. Although officiating is not an easy job, so I certainly wouldn't want to do it. I know they try to do their best, but it doesn't hurt to plant that seed.
Yeah, I mean, but I was keeping my eye on whether sort of players were like willing to help her up off the floor and things like that. But it seemed like everyone was reasonably happy out there. They coped. They showed up. They obviously beat what is still not a great team, but
yeah,
it's good for Chicago at least to see their players fighting to the end of the season.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about both these teams in terms of who, what, when, and where, strategy, and things like that later in this podcast. But I wanted to start today just talking to you about, player status, what certain words mean, and how that might impact what teams are going to do at the end of the season. So, like you said, Chicago and Connecticut are out, and then also the Mystics are out as well, and then Dallas, they're out as well. So I want to focus on those four teams because it's going to be really interesting to see what they do after the season is over and all the expansion draft and all that. So the first thing I want to ask you about are just terms. So in your report, if you could just explain free agent, restricted free agent, reserved, and suspended contract expired. Those are four terms when I was looking at your report. I was like, I need to know what those are so that I can have a better understanding.
Yeah, for people listening and for readers of our newsletter, I do off-season guides, or have done in previous years, and they'll start coming out for this year and for the upcoming off-season in the next few days. Yeah, players at the end of the season going into the off-season can be what we tend to shorten to UFA, which means unrestricted free agent, which is someone who's out of contract, can sign anywhere, talk to anyone, and do what they like at the end of the season. The team has no hold on them, except with the core designation, which is like the NFL's franchise tag for people that are more familiar with that, where teams can restrict one unrestricted free agent from talking or signing with anyone else. And it comes with a 1-year Supermax contract offer. Whether that's still going to exist in the same form under the next collective bargaining agreement is currently up in the air. Anything we're talking about could
Right.
theoretically change within the next few months when they come up with a new agreement. But we're assuming that everything's going to be largely the same, at least in terms of this sort of stuff. RFA, which is the next level down, is restricted free agent, which means player can talk to anyone, sign with anyone, but the team that they're leaving has the right to match that offer and keep the player. So if they sign an offer sheet with another team, which has to be for at least 2 seasons, then the other team, their existing team, can just match the offer, match all of the terms, and then keep the player. Restricted free agent doesn't tend to apply to many players because it's only for those who have 4 years of service in the league. So it's a small group. Most of them are usually the ones coming off a rookie scale contract because those last 4 years, if you take up the team option at the end of it. Reserved is when you're out of contract, but you don't have the years in the league to become a restricted or unrestricted free agent. So if you've only got 0, 1, 2 years of service in the league, only been credited with that, but you don't have a contract for the following season, you're reserved, which means the team you're on has exclusive negotiating rights. You can't talk to anyone else, you can't sign with anyone else unless the team gives you permission to talk to them. The team isn't required to offer anything more than a minimum contract in that situation, which is what they've often done. It's why we've seen Marina Hannis signed for a minimum contract in New York, when if she was a free agent, she would have been offered twice as much as she's being paid this season, at least by the Liberty. What we do sometimes see is teams offer more anyway, especially with international players who might not show up for a minimum contract. They'll just say, I'd rather lie on the beach during the summer. And
So they don't have to accept it if they're reserved. They don't have to accept those offers.
They can't do anything else if they want to play in the league. If that's all the team's willing to offer, if that's all the team's willing to offer them, then the team isn't required to offer them anything else. So,
but they can't go anywhere else.
Exactly. Yeah, not without the team agreeing to it. And the other designation you'll see sometimes on our cap sheets is it's reduced to SUSPCE on our sheets, but it means suspended contract expired, which is when a player was suspended. Usually that means they didn't show up for that season or agreed with the team they weren't going to play that season in the final year of their contract. And therefore they end up, their contract expires while they're suspended. And that essentially ends up in the same situation as when a player is reserved. The team has exclusive negotiating rights, and they don't have to pay the player any more than the minimum salary that applies to that player. It's slightly different because you don't have to send a qualifying offer, which you have to send to make a player reserved. But in practice, it's essentially the same.
So if you're suspended, do you get paid your salary? Like if someone is with child, you do or don't get paid?
We have special rules for pregnancy and childbirth. But if you just decide to not play that year, like you've been playing overseas in Europe or in Australia or wherever, and you decide that was enough for you that year and you don't want to spend the summer playing in the WNBA, then you usually agree to a suspension for that year. And if that year was the final year of your contract, then you become suspended, contract expired at the end of that season.
But the team still has the rights to.
The team still holds your rights if they want them. Yeah, you can renounce these rights at any time, but yeah.
The team can renounce the rights.
Yeah, the team can. The player can't do anything about it.
The player can't. So if I'm on one of those lists, reserve or suspended contract expired, if I don't like the offer, my only choice is to go somewhere else and play.
Yeah. If you want to play in the WNBA, you either have to sign what they're willing to offer you, or, I mean, we've seen, players who make trade requests usually get what they want in the end in this league. So if your rights are reserved on one team, but you want to play somewhere else, and you are only willing to go to that place, and you tell the team that, quite often they'll come up with a deal, or sometimes they'll just release the player and let them go. But yeah, In theory, the player can't do anything other than just sign it or not play.
or go overseas or play in
Yeah,
Unrivaled
yeah,
or
you can play in other
Athletes
leagues, but
Unlimited. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, okay.
WNBA's got no control over that.
Okay. That's what I thought. Man, okay. So that is very interesting, and they're a lot more the players are a lot more limited than I had expected.
They can be. The free agency has actually extended a lot more than it used to be. The teams used to have more control over players than they do now. But if you're still in the early years, as in you've only been in the league a couple of seasons, then the teams tend to have a lot of control over what you can do, where you can go.
Got it. Got it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the expansion draft. We obviously don't know what the parameters are going to be for this season, but what were they for last season, so we can kind of get an idea of how the expansion draft works.
Yeah, we should stress ahead of this that they've said nothing about what rules are going to be for Portland
Right.
and for Toronto. So we're just going off what they've been before. Yeah, for Golden State, each team could protect 6 players. And that meant any player who was on your roster at the or that you held any kind of rights to at the end of the previous season. So that includes unrestricted free agents because each expansion team is allowed to select one unrestricted free agent and then immediately use their core designation that we talked about a few minutes ago on that player in order to then hold their exclusive rights. So if you want to make sure that an expansion team doesn't use that pick on the player, then you have to protect you have to protect an unrestricted free agent as one of the 6. So that means like Las Vegas will have to include Asia Wilson on their 6, for example, because
Duh.
yeah, you can't take that risk, and they'll do it with Jackie. They'll do it with Jackie Young as well, even though they'll only be able to call one of them themselves. They won't want to leave open the option that Toronto or Portland would take the other one and call that player as their core player.
Right,
But yeah,
right.
it's 6 each, and then in the last one, as in with Golden State, they could only take one player from each team. In the upcoming one, we've obviously got 2 teams picking, so they're probably going to have to open it up more than that, and it's going to have to be at least 2 from each team in order to stock the rosters of 2 expansion teams at the same time. And yeah, and you can take anyone. You can take unrestricted, restricted, reserved, suspended, draft rights players. So, for example, Golden State will have to protect Jasita. Uh, Chicago would have to protect Asia Sivka, who they took in the first round this year, who didn't show up. So yeah, draft rights count as well.
Gotcha. Okay, and yeah, we have no idea. It's going to be the Wild Wild West with most. It seems like the category that most players are going to, unless you're a rookie under contract, most players will be in one of those other categories that we talked about earlier.
So yeah, I mean, because everyone's been expecting the new collective bargaining agreement to completely reset the salary scale, all of the veterans have signed contracts that expire at the end of this season. So virtually 80% of the league is out of contract at the end of the season, and a lot of them, significant proportion, are going to be unrestricted free agents. So yeah, once we get a collective bargaining agreement done, and like the off season actually starts, it's going to be a lot of signing news, a lot of contract news. Everyone trying to work out how much people should be paid under whatever new system they come up with. Yeah, it's going to be kind of nuts, and should be fun.
Yes, it should be fun trying to keep up with all that. So, okay. Well, thanks for that. So what I want to do now is, just go team by team with those 4 teams that we talked about that just haven't made the playoffs. And according to your report, we look at the Mystics. They have Sonia Citron, Kiki Iriafen, Georgia Abor, J.C. Sheldon, and Lucy Olson under contract. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Uh, Rookie and one second year player, and then Shakira Austin. So, in terms of that, where do you think they might go with? They obviously have more draft picks, that they traded for. What do you feel like would be the best route for them in terms of, again, we have no idea what they have to prepare for all scenarios in terms of the collective bargaining agreement. But what do you think that they need? Because they have George Amore coming back. Everyone, I'm assuming, she's based on her previous playing that she's obviously good enough to make an impact, right? So you're not gonna get rid of her. But what do you think they'll do?
I mean, they do have 3 first-round picks, so that's obviously one place where they're gonna try to add talent. Presumably, they think Amore's gonna be their point guard of the future. We'll see whether she's good enough to take on that role at the pro level. But, I mean, they've got Citron and Austin in place inside. They probably think those 2 are their starters long term. You've got Citron on the wing. If you think Amore's your point guard, then the obvious place to try and chase a free agent would be someone to play alongside Citron on the wing for if you're looking for a 5th starter. Maybe you also look for another veteran point guard in case Amore doesn't work out, or in case she isn't healthy to start the season. It can take a long time to recover from that kind of injury. Whether they think Sug Sutton is good enough to carry on in that role. She's had a pretty good season this year,
Yeah,
but
she
obviously
has.
this is a team that has missed the playoffs, so they're probably going to want to upgrade more than just hoping that their youth gets better each year. I would imagine they're going to try and go out and shop. But yeah, someone to play alongside Citron would be the obvious choice to me.
Do you feel like they would use any of those draft picks as capital in free agency?
I mean, if they need to, then yeah, sure. I mean, if you wanted to try and make some kind of sign and trade, it depends what sort of system the league comes up with for the next collective bargaining agreement. Again, because there may not be much point making sign and trades depending on what kind of system they come up with. If everyone's an unrestricted free agent and can sign with you as a free agent for just as much as in a sign and trade, then there's no point making them. You can just use the picks on youth and go out shopping anyway. I imagine. I mean, Washington aren't in the greatest situation in terms of they play in a tiny little gym that probably isn't that appealing to people. I don't know. I don't think they're one of the teams with a like the dedicated practice facility along the lines of what sort of Vegas and Seattle and teams like that have.
Mhm.
So I don't know whether that would help in terms of whether you're actually going to be able to attract free agents. There's obviously going to be sort of an arms race in terms of whether you're appealing to them or not when everyone is a free agent and can go wherever they like. But the youth should help. If you know you're going to a team with Citron, with Iriafen, with Austin, you're going to a team with a core. There's a lot of teams that don't have a lot. Once you take away all their free agents, there's not a lot left for some teams at this point. So yeah, Washington should at least have some elements that would attract other players to come and play for them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody expected them to be, where they were this year, even though obviously they didn't make the playoffs, but they were way better than most folks had anticipated. And I think they do have people that other people would want to play with in terms
Yeah,
of that, the talent level, especially with Citron and Iriafen, and then having a healthy Shakira Austin made all the difference for them this
yeah,
year.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was really nice seeing Austin finally getting to play a run of games rather than playing 3 and then being out for a month, which is basically how she spent the last 2 years.
Yeah, I love her. She's at her height, her athletic ability and spatial awareness and ability to contort while she's in the air. Just there's some things that she does that people her height shouldn't be able to do. So was really happy as well. Let's move on to Dallas. In terms of their draft picks, what does that look like?
Dallas have their own first round pick and have already locked in the top odds in the lottery draw for that first round pick because they were bad last year as well as this year. So when you use the WNBA's 2-year system, they have the worst record over the last 2 years and will have it at the end of the season. So yeah, they could easily end up with the number 1 overall pick again, which if you look back at the history of the WNBA, a lot of good teams were based on multiple number 1 picks over sort of consecutive years. You got
Vegas, yep.
Vegas, both of Seattle's sort of title work built teams were on Stewart and Lloyd, and then Bird and Jackson before that. Yeah, so yes, maybe someone comes in and is a building block alongside Beckers.
Explain the can you elaborate on the 2-year system a little bit more?
Well, unlike the NBA, the WNBA sort of several years ago switched to the lottery is done by adding last year's final standings to this year's final standings, and the teams that missed the playoffs, you put them in order with the combined totals from those two seasons. Golden State helped keep it simple by probably making the playoffs as of tonight, so we don't have to worry about how you handle a team that only played in one of those two seasons. So yeah, it's going to end up with it's pretty much been set in stone for a few weeks now. If I look it up, hold on 1 second. And yeah, Dallas will be number one. Chicago will be second, but their pick is owned by Minnesota. So the Lynx could easily be picking very high in a season where they have a good shot at winning a championship. And then it would be LA next, Washington after that, and Connecticut after that. But Chicago will be picking for Connecticut, and somebody else, Seattle, I think, that owns LA's pick as well. So yeah, there's a lot of movement this year, and a lot of people getting very confused about who owns whose pick, especially with swap rights.
So let the rumors begin that AZ Flood is going to be a Dallas Wing next year.
Oh, I think those began long ago. Yeah, that's
what 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 do you do with Arike Agumbawali? Talented, inner prime, volume shooter, used to having the ball in her hands. Do you keep her? Do you use her as draft capital? Because obviously other teams would love to have her. What's your thought on that?
in all honesty, I would have traded her a year ago.
Why?
And because I think it's hard to rebuild a team that has been her team for a long time. And I think it's hard to win with a volume shooter like her as your key piece. And I think this is now Becca's team as well. So, and I don't, and with the season that she's had, missing a lot of games with tendonitis, I think her value's probably lower now than it was before. She's also slated to be an unrestricted free agent. So, in order to get any value from her, they're going to have to core her. Which would they want to be the team paying her a supermax contract, assuming the same sort of structures in place? Do you want to take up that much of your cap paying her that? And does anyone else want to take up that much of their cap paying her that? She's obviously very talented. I'm not denying that. If you want someone to get you a bucket with 5 seconds left on a shot clock, she's a great person to be able to throw the ball to and say, get something off, get a decent shot off and try and score. But you look at the numbers, she's not efficient. She's never been efficient. She's a better defender than she used to be, but she's still not good. And yeah, I think it's hard to build around her. So I would move her if they can, but I don't know what the offers are going to be like.
Well, I mean, from a coaching standpoint, like I know she was hurt, so it's obvious she is very talented and she could bring a lot to a team. But yeah, those are some other things to consider in terms of money, which always talks. For sure. So they have the first pick, and what's your thought on who they might protect besides the obvious? Paige, Maddie, probably Isaiah James, JJ Quinterly had a good year. What's your thought on who else they would protect?
Yeah, it's complicated in Dallas because Kurt Miller's already leaned young, which means they have rights and a lot of people who extend through next year. So they have a lot of people to choose between in terms of finding six, if it's six again. I like what Geisel Soda has done this year for them inside, but then you're picking sort of her over Liuru. Haley Jones has had a good season for them as well. There'd be her reserved rights would be on that list. They've even got people like Awak Queer, who hasn't been in the league for a while now, but is talented as well. They obviously took very high in the draft at one point. And yeah, it's a long list of options. I would probably protect Geisel Soda. I think they like Quinterly, but the question is whether Quinterly's a great fit alongside Becca's long term as well. Because if she's not, then you're protecting a backup. So yeah, I think it's tricky for Dallas, and yeah, they've got some decisions to make. There'll be some interesting picks to take from them for an expansion team as well.
So when you have somebody like Awak Kawir, How long do you hold the rights to a player, say from Europe, that does not come right away?
You can hold them indefinitely. Um, each team can only hold a maximum of 4 players' rights that weren't involved in the preceding season. But if you don't go over that number, then you can hold them as long as you like. Like for example, the last I heard, Connecticut still hold the rights to Alba Torrens, who is now I think 36, 37, and a legend of the Spanish team. They drafted her, yeah, decades ago, and she has never played in the WNBA. But yeah, I believe they still just hold them and have never given them up, so they've never gone away.
Interesting, interesting. Okay, let's move to the Connecticut Sun. Um, talk about what they got from Washington in terms of uh, Aaliyah Edwards. Did they get anything else, and how will that work in terms of who they're going to protect besides the obvious?
Um, Connecticut aren't going to have picks that are as good as you might expect for a team that have been as bad as they have been most of the season, because Chicago have swap rights to Connecticut's pick. With this one's the complicated one that confuses everybody. Chicago own Phoenix's draft pick, but have swap
Okay,
rights between that pick and Connecticut's pick. So Chicago are ultimately going to end up with Connecticut's pick, and Connecticut are going to get Phoenix's from that swap.
that's not
So
confusing at all, Richard.
yeah, you can see why people have struggle to understand what's going on there. Yeah, and Connecticut also gave up a swap in that deal with Washington, but that was a swap between New York's pick and Minnesota's pick. So that's that's moving around a little, but just moving around on sort of the bottom half of the first round. So they got 2 picks, but 2 not great first round draft picks. And yeah, who they're going to protect again? They got sort of youth and players that they'll want to keep, but not too many more than the core that are obvious. You know, Rivers, Morrow, Lacan, Edwards, presumably the first 4, and then
What about
after that,
Mabry? First, she was not happy. Then now she's kind of happy. Uh, what do
yeah,
you think they'll do with her?
Mabry was because I went through trying to come up with my protection picks, assuming everyone got 6, and Mabry was one of the difficult ones because they wanted to trade her, and she wanted to leave, but they obviously never got any trade offers that they
Right.
felt were good enough to be worth taking. And like Arike in Dallas, she'll be an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season. So the only way they retain her rights is if they core her. And would that make her unhappy? Would they want to pay her a supermax contract if she just signed that core offer? Would anyone else then want to trade for her when she would be expecting at least 1 year under that supermax core offer? So yeah, ultimately I left her off the 6 that I would expect to be protected, but we'll see whether they go that way. Well, we probably won't because the protection picks won't be made public. But um, yeah, I would imagine that if that was the case, Mabry might be one of the selections for Toronto or Portland. It depends whether they're, she's a divisive figure, Marina Mabry. She tends to upset a lot of people.
No,
Um,
not her. Did
she's
she have
also
a good enough year though that
that was the
someone
next
would
thing I was going to
want
say.
to
Yeah,
pay her, a lot of money? That would be
yeah.
my
This
question.
this has not been the best season for her, and yeah, I would rather let her become an unrestricted free agent and then pay her some kind of salary in the mid range, which would be, I think, sort of more fair and more what she's actually worth, and also would take some of the pressure off her to be a leader on a team because then she gets to go where she wants, and she probably gets to go as like a 6th woman kind of role, something like that, where she might be a better fit than she has been on a couple of teams recently, where they've wanted her to be a starting 2 guard and try and score a lot, and it's not gone great generally. The teams haven't won a lot, even if she's put points up on occasion.
Yeah, she's not a player that's going to go get you a bucket under 5 seconds. Like she needs to be set and in rhythm and have space and all that. Very valuable for those skills, but um, in terms of somebody that you're going to really depend on for a ton of points, I see your point there. So yeah, it'll be interesting with Connecticut because they've got they've got Rivers, Morrow, LeConte, great. I think those rookies have had great years, and yeah, we'll see. BMAC, what you got? You're interrupting our show. I
Well,
know
you
you got
got
something important. I know you got something important.
it's breaking news, and y'all are talking about the Connecticut Sun, so I felt the need to come on and tell you, as of about 10 minutes ago, Alexa Philippou of ESPN put out on Twitter, breaking news: the state of Connecticut has submitted a proposal that would keep the Sun in the state. So
there's another
Okay.
option for
yeah,
buying or selling the team, just to make that whole situation even more complicated than it already was. Yeah.
Yes, I saw the video by the I think it was the CFO for the state of Connecticut that was talking about keeping them in the state. So interesting, interesting. Kathy has more to think about.
Yeah, I don't know what the WNBA's plan really is there. I don't understand why they aren't keen to get to Boston instead, which would be a bigger media market and would be a lot of a lot easier to travel to for all of the other teams as well. They Getting to the Mohegan has been an issue for a lot of teams for a lot of years, and players don't particularly like living in the middle of nowhere in around the casino either. So yeah, I'm apart
Well,
from
it's no small thing though that the Boston group did an end around. Like they didn't follow, quote unquote, follow procedure. Um, so I don't know if that has anything to do with it. They didn't quite do it the way that other teams are supposed to do it. And I know that they wanted Boston to get a new team, not an existing team.
yeah.
So that's
But
interesting.
does that mean they want the Sun and the Boston team to exist together? Because that's two teams within a pretty narrow area, and whether they want them to try and coexist, try and create a rivalry there. But yeah, and that would obviously be a long-term plan. Then you're putting like the Boston market into a distant future, given we've already got the next three expansion teams slated for like through 2030.
Yeah, well, we're not privy to all the inside information, so it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. But thanks for that, BMAC. That's going to be that also, as we were talking, with the uncertainty, is a free agent going to want to go to Connecticut if they have no
Yeah.
idea, if they're going to end up in Houston or Boston or stay in Connecticut? That uncertainty, I think, would give some free agents pause.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Connecticut has ever been a great draw for free agents, partly because of the sort of the complaints that Alyssa Thomas had last year with sort of they practice in the same gym as birthday parties for little kids. You've got that alongside being in the middle of nowhere compared to a lot of other markets, and yeah, it's never been a draw, and that would be on top of that would be not knowing where you're going to be playing over an extended contract.
Well, being a general manager for them right now is not fun. I mean, you got to have scenario upon scenario upon scenario.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know what they're going to be building for the next season. Unfortunately, the plan might end up having to be we draft what we've got and we try and build with the youth from within, because that might be the only option they have left if they can't draw anyone in as a free agent destination.
Yeah, unless they go overseas to somebody who just really wants to play in the WNBA.
Yeah, I mean, it worked well for Golden State. Players like Janelle Salon wanted to come to the US and wanted to be on a team where they were going to get to play, we're going to get real minutes, and would actually get shots off rather than have to sit on the end of a bench behind a load of other players. So yeah, there are players who want to go to that sort of situation.
Interesting. All right, thanks, BMAC. Let's go to our last team, which is Chicago. And obviously, you have Cardoso, you have Reese. Van Lith hasn't really had a great year. So, talk to me about what you think they should do with whatever draft pick they have, and then who they would protect or not protect.
I mean, for protections, this is one of the teams where I'm not sure they really even need six. It's Reese and Cardoso. I imagine they protect Atkins because she was, they paid a lot for her in the trade. They're probably going to want to try and keep her. Whether they ultimately will or not is a totally different question. I imagine they'll protect Sivka, having taken her in the first round. And yeah, then you fill up the list with whatever you feel like, whether it's Van Lith, whether it's Westbeld, they still have the draft rights to Aisha Koulibaly. Sevgi Uzun would be reserved. Yeah, it's a rough list. I mean, everyone else on the sort of all of those veterans on their current roster are slated to be unrestricted free agents, but you wouldn't want to pay any of them a supermax salary apart from maybe Atkins if you're willing to overpay her to keep her around.
I do think Elizabeth Williams has had a decent season though,
Yeah,
and
I
would
don't
be
think she's
valuable.
I think she's a valuable roster player. I'm not sure if she's a starter on a good team, or maybe she's a
Right.
fifth starter on a good team. But yeah, you'd want to keep her around if she's willing to stick around. So, I mean, she played this season for less than what she's worth probably to stick around in Chicago. So I guess she probably likes it there. So yeah, maybe you keep her around anyway, but you probably don't need to protect her because I would imagine Toronto or Portland are going to have probably better options to take with their UFA pick if they want to use it.
And one more time on their draft pick, they have explain that to me. I'm still a little confused on what they have.
They own Phoenix's pick.
That's it. Okay, so they own Phoenix's pick, but then Connecticut has.
But they also own swap rights between that pick and Connecticut's pick. So they will exercise that because Connecticut are going to miss the playoffs and Phoenix is going to make them. So they will end up with Connecticut's pick. But they don't own their own because Chicago are going to have.
Minnesota has it.
Exactly, because they gave it up to get Angel Reese a couple of years ago, basically.
So Minnesota is going to finish at the top, if not champions, and still have that pick.
Then yeah, somewhere in the lottery. They're going to get the number 2 odds in the lottery. So, yeah, maybe the number 1, maybe number 2. They could end up with a Lauren Betts or an Awa Pham or whoever ends up being the top prospect in the list next year. Yep.
Wow. Yeah, I'm not as confused as before we started. So I appreciate you educating me and the listeners on that, but it's going to be crazy. When do you think we might get the rules for the expansion so that people can start to make plans? Do you have any idea?
I think we won't get it until after we get a new collective bargaining agreement. So I think that's going to be the first rule, the first thing they need to get done. And whether that happens before Christmas or I've been saying I expected them to slide into next year before they actually got it signed. So that could be January, that could be February, that could be later if somebody decides to play true brinksmanship and we end up with either a lockout or a strike. But hopefully it gets sorted, and then yeah, that'll be pretty much the first order of business once they get it signed is they'll have to get an expansion draft done.
Well, where can people find the information that you have in terms of educating themselves on all these processes?
Well, all of the contract information is on our website at herhoopstats.com. All the salary cap sheets for what contracts people are on and when they expire and what rights they become after that. But yeah, in terms of my writing, there'll be off-season guides for every team coming out on the Her Hoop Stats newsletter, which people can subscribe to or go and read on the website. And that'll be free. You can pay for the other bits of the newsletter, but those will come out for nothing.
Free 99. We love it. Free 99. Well, hey, listen, Her Hoop Stats is where you can get all the information on WNBA and NCAA players. So, Richard, thank you so much for your time. And we're going to come back and go over some of the rest of these teams at a later date. Appreciate you.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks. Make sure you subscribe to Her Hoop Stats and follow us on all the social media platforms. Until next time, I'm Helen Williams with Richard Cohen. Have a great day.